Cool. All right,
Awesome.
I'll introduce us, and then we'll get the ball rolling. Oh boy, here we are. All right, well, you did it now. You clicked on this video, so you know what you're in for. This is David V Mammina, author of dark fantasy, gothic fantasy, also creator of a deck building card game. I also teach history to kids. I'm a Dave of many trades, but a master of none. No, I don't know what I'm saying. I am here with the illustrious Frank Eberling, expert gamer, philanthropist, and playboy philanthropist. What is it? I forgot.
Sure, we'll go with that.
What 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 was Tony Stark's line? I forgot what he said. The billionaire, playboy, philanthropist, something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Anyway, yeah, man, it's good to have you on here. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm really well. You know what? It's funny. I used to do a podcast called Finding Fantasy. And what I would do you remember that podcast? I used to have it a lot.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it was something I just thought to do that would be fun and just interview people and see how where if fantasy is in all these other places you wouldn't expect fantasy to be. Um, but now I'm doing something fun, which is talking with great people and just shooting the breeze, having a good time. And we had tried to set this up for a while, I think, right?
It's definitely been a while. Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, remember the last time we did it? We had this whole conversation, and all of a sudden it was like, wait, we weren't recording this whole time. Do you remember?
It's yeah, that stupid Facebook garbage. It just oh my God.
It was
What
crazy.
yeah, I don't know, but it seems to me that Zoom is a lot better. And if you're gonna do it, you gotta do it right. I think Zoom is the best way to do it because Facebook, you have all these pop-up crap. You got click on this, click on that. Zoom, once you're in, you're in. It's self-explanatory. Facebook just makes it too convoluted, and it's like, okay, I press this, then I gotta press this. Oh, but you forgot to press that. So you know what? Who knows what if it's recording or what it's doing? It's just
Insanity.
ridiculous.
Oh my
Oh,
God. Well, I'm glad we
well,
get to talk about games now, finally.
yeah, and I'm not mistaken. I think that conversation. I think we're over an hour. I think
Yeah,
we're
we were
we're
talking
talking.
for a
So
long time. We had a great conversation.
yeah.
That was great, but here we are, you know what I mean? It took a
Finally
while
here.
to
Yep.
get back.
All right. I like to say that this the COVID aspect of it or something, because it's like the whole world is like shut down, but like the recording was shut down when we're, you know, have our conversation going, and it's just ridiculous that it just didn't record because that would have been awesome. That would have been great content.
That was a good conversation, I
It
know.
really was. Yeah.
Unbelievable. Well, we're not going to try to recreate it. What this video is today is two guys having a conversation about video games and how they have impacted us personally, but also how are they impactful in society. I remember years ago, I'm teaching history, and it was in the 80s, 90s, and after. And the project was for students to research a topic. And if they didn't want to choose any topics that I gave them, they can pitch me a topic that they wanted to research. And one kid pitched Mortal Kombat. And I said, "Come on, man, really?" And he goes, "No, I'll research it. I'll tell you why." He pitched me Mortal Kombat, why it was historically relevant, and it blew me away how Mortal Kombat that came out changed the game, how it raised the stakes. It got all the parents upset, scared. It had the government involved. It started the whole rating of games. Unbelievable. So, video games have impacted our lives, whether we like it or not.
Right.
So, we have Frank, who's going to give us an expert perspective video games. I am the writer, so I'm going to give you my picks for video games that I thought had some really great writing in it, as far as storytelling, character development. And we're just gonna, give our top 10 and just have a discussion. We're gonna try to celebrate video games today. This is the idea. So let's get into it. Frank, start us off. What is a video game? Well, actually, let me ask you this before we get to the
Yeah.
list.
Mhm.
How has video games impacted your life?
They impacted me in so many different ways. When you lose someone that's been close to you, um, you kind of just try to go escape from the world for a little while, right? Work can be stressful at times, dealing with people can be stressful at times, and it just really had a major impact on my whole life. I mean, it still does to this day. Um, I just get into a game and I feel like I'm there. You know, I'm never going to be able to go to Hawaii anytime soon, but there are games that I could just go to like and just lose myself in. Whether it be Assassin's Creed, Skyrim, those are probably the best examples because they're open world. Listen, you want to go to like Iraq, you do you. But you know what I mean? Places like that, I don't want to go to. I can in a video game, but places like a paradise, whether it be like Puerto Rico or places like that, which I have been to Puerto Rico, which is very nice. But for an example wise, that's what, couple $1,000 or something like that to get a plane ticket, get a hotel, get food there and that kind of stuff. Listen, I could pop in Assassin's Creed anytime and I could go to any of those types of places. Of course, it's sometimes it was places like long ago, perfect example, Assassin's Creed Mirage, you're playing like in Baghdad, like in like the 1600s. And it's like, oh, I do not want to be there in that time frame. But the aesthetics of it, when you look and you see the horizon, the sun come over the sunset, and the beaches and everything, you're kind of going like, that's pretty nice. And then you could just lose yourself in it. You could be playing that game, do you think in 10 minutes? You look at your watch and it's like you have 3 hours in. It's like, I got to go to sleep. So, um, had a major impact on my life. I've been through so much. I lost my grandmother, when I was like 21. As soon as I hit 21, I was working at a video game store at the time, and I was surrounded by video games all the time. And there was times where I got home and I did not want to play a video game because I was around them all the time at work. But it just made me lose myself in immersion and get that experience and just be like, okay, I'm going through some hard times right now, play a video game, and you kind of just forget about the problems. So, but those are minor things. But I kind of feel like if you just need a break from life, whether it be work has been stressful, someone like in your life is just crazy or something like that, now I have a great girlfriend. I love her so much. So that's out of the equation now. She plays video games as well. So it is awesome. I love her so much. She's been helping me through so much. I'm not going to go into it, but there's certain situations that I was going through and she helped me. So I am truly grateful for her to have her in my life. I probably would have a better answer if I was still going through some craziness. Uh, but video games has always been in my life, whether it be the very first video game system I've ever played, which was ColecoVision. That that's showing my age there. Pong on Atari, and then Nintendo. I don't know if you remember the jump pad, and you had like the jumping track, and then the Super Mario, the Dunk Hunt, when it
Oh
came
yeah,
all
of
together in a
course.
package. Classics, right?
Was
That's
it basically sold itself, man.
It really did. And now you have to like buy everything. You don't even get a video game with the system. And if you do, it's probably not a video game that you want. It's, but yeah, that's pretty much where it started from. And I just been playing video games ever since. But we'll get into it. We could probably just save a lot of that kind of stuff too for like another podcast. Um, yeah. I've been playing video games all the time. My girlfriend could tell you my collection. I don't know if you ever seen my video game collection digitally. I don't even need Game Pass. She could tell you like my Steam is crazy, my Xbox games, my Nintendo, PlayStation, all that. It's ridiculous.
Wow.
Ridiculous.
So yeah,
I don't know if
when
that's
I
a good
called
thing
you
or
an
bad.
expert, I was right. Well,
Yeah.
well, you know what? To your point, I'm a teacher, so I write on the side and do these all these other things. But I'm a teacher, and when I get home, I'm exhausted. So when we have breaks, when we have weekends, there are people who want to go out, go away, and sure, me and my fiance do plan for these things, but for the most part, I'm too tired. I'm too exhausted to do all these things. So for 50 bucks or so, you can get yourself a video game you love and you can have an escape. And that's what I use it for. I use it for an escape from stress, just like you said. And the thing that's interesting is I haven't played video games in years. I haven't. And when Baldur's Gate came out, Baldur's Gate 3 came out, and I love stories. I love playing role-playing games. My fiance got me a PlayStation 5 and Baldur's Gate 3. She said, "Here you go." And little did she know that it would become my life. I couldn't believe it. But then what does she do? She sits with me. She watches me play because the story is so immersive, so exciting. Anything can happen. When I roll that dice, we don't know what it's going to land on, and it's very, very exciting. So I love the choice-based games, but I also love games I could just shut my brain off and just play and just have fun. It's a shooter, a fighter, whatever it is. But man, I'm with you. I think video games, for people who don't play, they wonder why do people sit and put money into these things? And until you find the game you like, I think that's the issue. It's like
Right.
books. There are people who don't like to read, and I tell them, it's not that. It's just you haven't found the right books. When you find the genre that you like and the right author and the right uh, type of
Genre.
feel. Yeah, the genre, the feel, you have to feel like you're escaping, like in a video game, and you have to find the right game. So, anyway, I think that's the whole crux of this video today, that we wanted to share the impact of these things, and we wanted to highlight some video games that really did that for us. So, Frank, we're going to take turns. I
Sure.
want to hear what's one of your picks of video game that impacted you.
Okay. I think what I'll do is I probably will start, like I think you had mentioned we're gonna go 10, 9, 8, and so on and so forth. So I think I'll start from the bottom of the list and work my way down. I'm gonna go with Metal Gear Solid. Um, Reason being is, do you remember getting demo discs with Pizza Hut
Oh
back in the
my
day?
gosh,
PlayStation demo
yeah.
discs?
Back when they had
Okay.
money, absolutely.
Right. Yeah, right. When they were good. Um, So I remember going with my dad to Pizza Hut one day and getting the pizza, and they give you a demo disc, right? PlayStation, I forgot what it was called off my top of my head. This is like years and years ago. And this is before I had a PlayStation 1. So I'm like, oh, man, I don't even have a system, but I got a demo disc. What do I do with it? Just stare at it? So luckily enough, um, get home and I see this box. And I think my dad had this pre-planned because I guess one of his friends at work told him that, if you have a PlayStation, you get a demo disc at Pizza Hut. And he knows I love pizza. My dad loves pizza. So make a long story short, we get a demo disc. What's on it? Metal Gear Solid. I'm like, oh, this is great. But again, at the time, I was like, I don't have a system. So I'm just looking at this demo disc. I'm like, okay, get home. Anyway, so I see the box. I'm like, what's this? But that says open it. I open it. PlayStation. I'm like, oh my God. The box is like this big. Open that thing up, set it up. And at the time, the original PlayStation had the red, yellow, and white in the back. That's the original PlayStation. And then a year after, they re-released the PlayStation and they got rid of that and it was just HDMI. But the sound quality on the original PlayStation was a lot better because it had those three wires in the back. So anyway, hook it up downstairs on a big tube TV, a Zenith TV. I think the thing was like 45-inch TV, and it was pretty decently sized for that time. But it had like the knobs for the volume and all that. Old school TV, probably in the mid 80s, probably the TV was from. Hook it up and everything. Got to put it on channel 3. And then I popped in the disc. It had Spyro demo on there, Crash Bandicoot, Metal Gear Solid. I was like, I'm playing Metal Gear Solid. Put the disc in, I'm playing it. That game was ahead of its time. When that game came out, you think of like James Bond and like kind of like those espionage kind of movies. You're like playing a movie. Graphically at the time, it was like, this is the best thing ever, right? Graphically, it was horrible because the dude's face looked like a piece of clay that was put together with no eyelids or facial features. It just looked like just a slate face. But anyway, when I was playing it, I was just, this game is incredible. This game is the best game I've ever played ever since like Nintendo days. You know what I mean? The PlayStation really just was ahead of its game at the time. But again, there's other games from various other video game systems that I included on the list, but I had a jump start on this one because I spent so many times playing that demo disc that I think I wore it out and the disc just stopped playing. They gave you up until you got to this certain part of the demo disc, and then that was the end of the demo. It says thanks for playing, and then they give you a release date. But yeah, that game that impacted my life because I'll never forget it. I had no idea I was getting a PlayStation that day. My dad's like, yeah, make sure that that we get that demo disc. He's telling the guy when he's giving us the pizza, and I'm like, demo disc. So we get it. I'm like looking at it, and I'm like, what am I gonna do with this? I can't play this. I don't have a system. And he can't. He looks at me and gives him like this smirk. So I didn't think much of it at the time. I'm thinking he's messing with me. My dad likes to mess with me. I mess with him. We just have that kind of, um, you know, relationship. And then I get home, I see that box. I'll never forget it. I ripped that thing apart. I was like, oh, I plug it in, playing it. But yeah, that game was ahead of its time back in the day. And I'm sure you remember that game as well.
Not only do I remember it, it's on my list. So the first
Oh, is it?
game, yeah, first
Oh, nice.
game
Oh,
already we
great.
are locked in.
And the
From
reason, and also, I said, you know me, how I do voices, and that game impacted me. I could do Solid Snake. That was one of my favorite characters ever since then. I don't know if I'm gonna make a fool of myself on
do
this,
it. Yeah,
but
I gotta hear this.
you want me to do it? All
Yeah,
right.
I want to hear it.
Okay. This is Snake. Way to go playing your PlayStation game. Anyway, this is Snake and I gotta go. Ate some tacos along the way. And then, yeah. Anyway,
That's
it's
so cool.
yeah, he would say some like random stuff in the game. Like, so like, when I will never forget this, 140.67 is when you talk to the colonel. And I think if I'm not mistaken, 141.65 is when you want to save your game to Mei Ling. I'll never forget that kind of stuff. That just stuff is just embroidered in my mind. And that's one of my favorite characters. I mean, his voice is just one of those things you'll never forget.
Well,
So,
true. His voice, it was one thing. That was one of the first games, I think. Now, I didn't have a PlayStation. I got that much later. I had to watch that game he played with friends that actually had the game at the time. And the thing that hit me with it was it had awesome storytelling, but it wasn't like a shoot 'em up. It wasn't go and fight and win, and then then you have some pizza, and then you play it again. You got to
right.
take time. It's like you are in the mission. You are the mission. It's about stealth. You have to experience that patience with him,
Right.
and also a game or a story is only as good as its villains. And that game had some of the most colorful villains
Oh,
ever. So
sure did.
I think Metal Gear Solid was probably the most solid one. And then from there, they got a little bit more expansive and a little bit weirder.
Yeah.
But Metal Gear Solid is on my list for awesome character development, awesome storytelling, awesome characters themselves, really. But yeah, all right, man. So far we're doing pretty good. Metal Gear, we're in.
Yeah, and that was just the demo disc. Can you imagine when I played the actual game with those 3 discs?
Oh my gosh, wow. Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
whew.
That's insane.
I put some time in on that game.
I bet you did. All right, well, so what's your next one?
I'm gonna have to go with Tony Hawk Pro Skater.
Wow,
Um,
all right. A
I,
lot of people love that. I mean, it's like a series. I mean, how many of those games have come out?
I'm gonna say at least 8, but they're probably more than that.
Wow.
There has to be around 8. There has to be. There's so many. But I have to go with the very first two. I think the first two were the best, and I think they just went a little crazy after that. And the first two because of the soundtrack. You know, you had some good music on there. And they re-released it, so I got back into it. They re-released it, and they really did a phenomenal job with the graphics. And I'm so happy that they kept the audio soundtracks intact because if sometimes when they don't have rights to a song, they'll take it out and they'll put like some garbage song and they won't even have another song in there to replace the one that they took out. And it's like, well, where's that song that I loved? It's like, oh, but no, the gameplay, everything for that time phenomenal. It was so much fun, like doing like ridiculous like grinding on like the rails and like jumping up like 500 feet in the air and like spinning around and collecting the skate, SKATE, and then like the boom box and all these different things you had to collect in the game. And it's like, oh no, I got to beat that time. Oh, you only give me 2 minutes to collect everything. Oh, you best to believe I got to step it up and collect everything. Um, but yeah, that game. I remember I spent so many hours in that game. And then when part two came out, I have to include part two because technically it's kind of similar, because of the fact that I felt like it was didn't really change that much, in my opinion. I think if anything, just the levels had changed, but they had the same skaters, but the soundtrack changed. And I was like, yeah, the songs on here I like, but then the songs, it's like, why they choose that? You have to, it's weird to me. It doesn't, sometimes when they have a song, it makes the game not flow as what I would like. I mean, you could change the song, but I just keep it on like, track one and just have it play all the way through. But then there's sometimes you just want to listen to that song on repeat. You know what I mean? But that game was ahead of its time too. It's one of pretty much the first skateboard games to come out besides 720 on the original NES. Because that's not on my list. Because I kind of feel like Nintendo games. I don't want to have like all bunch of Nintendo games on the list. You know what I mean? Even though 720 I liked, but Tony Hawk, forget it. That game is phenomenal. It's so good, so good.
Well, for the first time since you're bringing up Tony Hawk, I do remember playing that game over my neighbor's house in the basement where we had everything. It was freezing. My hands were like shaking. Uh, but yeah, he was trying to do all those tricks. He was trying to collect all that stuff. Well, I'll tell you, I may not have that on my list. What I do have on my list, though, have you ever played Chrono Trigger? Do you remember Chrono Trigger?
RPG, Super Nintendo.
Yes, Super Nintendo. For a Super Nintendo game to make you feel, to make you experience the belief that you're with those characters too. I believe that this Frog Knight is the real deal. He's one of the coolest characters in a game. And not because he looks like a Frog Knight, but he's just so cool, his character. But then you have characters from the future, from the past, and everything that you have to accomplish, you have to go back in time. Those games are not like my cup of tea, but that RPG was done so brilliantly. And for the villain to have joined you, to join your side to fight an even greater force was so impactful to me. I thought it was the coolest thing to have Magus on your team. It's like, oh my God, his magic is so cool. It's so perfect. It's so powerful. I mean, it was so hard to beat him. Now he's with us. So that just felt like it was a blast. And the first experience I had finishing that game, and then you get to play it again with the game plus, and then you have all the experience, you have
Right.
everything with you, and the game is like a breeze. It was such a gift. It was such an awesome reward. So I played the crap out of that game. And you're talking about music. That game had such beautiful music.
Yeah.
So yeah, Chrono Trigger definitely had a major impact on me.
Yeah, and if it wasn't for those games, there'll be no Skyrim. There'll be no Oblivion. There'll be no Assassin's Creed. Those types of games started it off, and I remember that game. I don't know how much time I put in that game. I just know that there was one part in the game that I got really frustrated in, and I'm like, I'm never gonna finish this damn game. But then sometimes you just got to take a step back in a game and just be like, let me try that strategy because it's all about strategy at the end of the day. It's about strategy in every game that you play. All about strategy because sometimes you got to take a break, you got to think about it, and you just keep going and going and trying. It's kind of like life. Sometimes in life you got to take a step back and be like, you know what? I didn't handle that situation the best, but next time, or let me just, you know what I'm saying? So
Hey, I know what you're saying because now we have iPhones, we have, smartphones. When I get stuck in a game, I go online, find out what's going on, how to do it.
Google it, Google it.
Back then, we had to be like, I got to get that Nintendo Power. Dang, I got to find
Right,
out how to do this.
right.
All right, so Frank, we're going to take a little break,
Sure.
and then we're going to get to your eighth pick. But I'm having a good time so far. What about you?
Absolutely. Me too. And it makes it so much better because it has been a minute since we talked. I mean, that's what 2 years ago, I think was the last time. If I'm
That's
not, it
right.
could maybe a little bit longer than that, but I think it's definitely been a minute.
Yeah. All right. Guys, please do not forget to let us know in the comments when you're watching this video. What are your favorite games? Tell me which games had a major impact. We'd love to hear you from that. All right, we'll be right back.
Okay.
Oh yeah. All right, we are back. Um,
Randy Savage. Oh yeah.
oh,
Cream
he
of the
did it.
top. Had to do it. Yeah. Had to do
Oh
it. Sorry.
no.
You
Oh
said,
my.
oh yeah, you that was a setup. I'm
What have
sorry.
I done? I should have known it was something. All right, Frank, what you got? So what? We're on to the eighth one.
Um, so I'm gonna have to go with Mario Kart. Gonna have to go with Mario Kart on that. Um, Now I could say from original experience up till now. So my original experience with that one was when that came out on Super Nintendo. I was just like, I like regular Mario, but you could race now with the Mario characters. That game was incredible. Now, it was ahead of its time when it came to being on Super Nintendo because Super Nintendo had F-Zero, which was a pretty fast game, like a and I love that game. It's just that I kind of felt like I wish there was like more substance to it. I felt like, maybe you could play as like actual characters. And when Mario Kart came along, I'm like Yoshi all the way. I dominate with Yoshi. That's my main, even to this day. The what was it, Mario Kart 8? I play with my daughter. I'm always playing as Yoshi. She's getting to be better than me. I'm like, man. I used to always dominate with Yoshi, and then she chooses Princess Peach or whoever, and I'm like, oh. But that game, I put a lot of hours in, just like the other, all these games on my list, or any other game for that matter. I put time in. So, but now, maybe not as much as then, because now I have a daughter, I have a girlfriend, so I kind of just choose my time wisely, get the time in and all. Even though she plays games, but I have to make time for them, right? And when you get older, you get uh I guess more mature, and at least I don't consider myself mature, to be honest with you, because I do random voices every now and then. I'm sure you heard all those recordings that day. You're probably like, the hell's going on? Frank loses his mind. But getting back to the topic on hand with Mario Kart, I would play as Yoshi. I wouldn't choose any other character. Maybe I dabble with Luigi, but Yoshi has always been my main. Even to this day, I barely use any other character. I might play as Wario, I might play as Luigi, but I tend to stick with Yoshi.
I
Not that
was
he had
gonna
the.
say if you also played as Link, that means you had something with green. So Luigi, Yoshi,
I see what you did there. Right, right. Yeah.
what's going on here? What's
I
happening?
think, yeah. I don't know what it is, why I chose Yoshi. I just think it was one of those things where it's like interesting because in order for you to play as Yoshi, you would have to find him in the game on the regular Mario games, and then you ride his back all the time. But now you have a game where you can actually play him as a character in a cart. Okay, that's pretty cool. But yeah, I would say Bowser's Castle is probably my favorite track, just because of those big boulders that would come down, like those big blocks and stuff that and then it would smash you, and then you would go like this, and you would be like flat as a pancake, and you'd be like, oh man, it was so cool. Like Yoshi, mm,
No,
so
that's
cool. But
definitely a great game.
so
Uh,
many tournaments I would have with that game. So many
oh yeah,
tournaments.
huge tournament, and like you said before, it's a lot of strategy. It's not just a fun game to play. I remember sitting with my friends, split screen, and I knew when I was going to get slammed and our friendship was going to be in question for a few minutes. So yeah, Mario Kart has brought people together all over the world. That one, it's a blast.
And to this day, it still does because I was talking about back then with the Super Nintendo version, right? Then when came Nintendo 64 came out, and then GameCube, and then Wii U, and now Switch. I play with my daughter on the Switch version. I got her into it because now you could drift. That's like a new feature with the latest Mario Karts, and you could do drifting. When you drift and then you're behind another character, you get like there's like this wind that comes from behind the character that's in front of you, and then you go and you just take off. And it's like one of those special little perks that they added in. If you do things right in the game, you get that special speed perk, and you're just like off. And another trick to that game, which I taught my daughter, when the number two, after it counts down from three, if you press your ignition down, you get a head start by 3 seconds. You get a little boost.
Yeah,
And
I
then
love that. You get to go big fast. Yeah.
when I told her that, I regret it because now she uses it all the time, and I'm like, but you know what? I'm happy. So, and a fun fact about my daughter is that she was 7 and she beat a 12-year-old in a Super Mario, what do you call it? The Super Smash Brothers tournament. She beat a
That's
12-year-old and
sick.
she was 7. I'm like, this is what happens when you teach your younger people,
Yeah.
the
You've
little
taught your pupil
gnomes.
well.
I
Wow.
taught my people well.
Well, Mario Kart was a great pick. From a writer's perspective, I have to go with another RPG. This is another choice game. I'm going with the Mass Effect series. So this is games one, two, and three, but mostly two. And I think people share that opinion with me. Two
Absolutely.
was badass. You come back
Yes.
from the dead, right? You're working for this evil company and you don't trust them, but you have to put together this ragtag group of really menacing people. And as you're working with them to defeat a greater evil, something that could essentially exterminate everything. So it's not about who's bad around you. We all have to work together or we're all dead. And I love how your choice in that story really is up to you. You could choose to trust them, you could choose to have a relationship with one of them. The character development is incredibly, I mean, it's amazing what you can do in that game.
Yes.
It was so revolutionary at the time.
Yeah.
I think it really inspired a lot of those futuristic, like what is the most recent one? What was it? Starcraft or something like
Starfield.
that?
Starfield.
Starfield. It just doesn't. It can't even get close to
Right.
Mass Effect spirit, you know. So
Yeah.
definitely,
Starfield is a good game, but there are lacking qualities in that game. I kind of feel like it's bland.
yeah,
And
brand.
I feel like there needs to be a lot more content in that game to step it up of how Mass Effect was, especially two, because I felt like Mass Effect 1, great game. Okay. You're starting with your character, but the aspect of your character and uh the build up for your character just wasn't there yet. And I think part two is when you've seen your character develop more and you got to know your character a lot better and you kind of go, oh, okay, I see where this is going. And then I wish that part three never happened because I kind of felt like part three was kind of like, okay, character's dead. So I guess there's not going to be a part four. But the weirdness thing enough is there will be a part four. Um, it's just that I don't know if it's in development hell or because of the writers, what was it, SAGTRA, the writers guild.
Oh, Sega Aftra,
AFTRA, yeah.
something
Yeah,
like that.
they had a strike including video games,
Right.
and I don't know if that was one of those things where it's like
I didn't hear
we're
anything
on.
about that. Yeah, I didn't know.
Yeah, there was. I heard about it about maybe 3 or 4 years ago that it's a thing, and I haven't heard too much after. But then I heard that it is a thing again. See what BioWare does. But I believe it will come out. It's
Well,
just
I'll
going to
tell you
take a little
this.
bit of time.
I think it was 2 years ago. I bought the trilogy set, and
Yep,
that set was. I put hours. You're talking about time. I was Commander Shepard, living the dream, man. That was awesome time. So if you haven't played Mass Effect yet, it's an older game, but it's a lot better than some of the newer games that came out. So if you want to have a heck of a
absolutely.
story, get in that. And the control in that game, the gameplay is phenomenal. So
And again,
awesome.
it was just ahead of its time. It just another classic, another banger that it was ahead of its time. Writing wise, and just the look of the game. It's like graphically, especially with the re-release,
Yeah.
they definitely fixed a lot of stuff that was going on where there was like minor sluggish, when you'd be like in a shooting with like there's like five guys coming at you in the shooting. I kind of felt like on the 360 and PS3 it was a lot of slowdown when it came out. And it kind of feel like now you're like, all right, I see what they did. They definitely fixed a lot of stuff. Definitely worth getting now. If you haven't played it,
Definitely.
play it.
It's
Play it.
clean, man. Yeah,
It
definitely
really
clean.
is. So good. So good.
All right. What's your next one, Frank?
Okay, I kind of referenced this just a tad when it did Macho Man's voice. I'm gonna have to put this is like a two for one, I guess you could say. WWF No Mercy / WCW versus NWO Revenge on Nintendo 64. I'm a huge wrestling fan. I stopped watching it for a few years. The whole CM Punk thing, when he wound up leaving, I just felt like the product got stale. The writing just was horrible. Storylines were horrible. But when those games came out, tournaments, I had so many tournaments in that game. Uh, WCW, NWO Revenge, I only liked it because of Macho Man was in it. Sorry, that's the only reason why I got it. Because when you taunted as Macho Man, he actually said his line. He goes, "Oh yeah," you know. He wasn't in WWF, of course, at the time. So in order for you to play as him, I mean, you can create him. The creator wrestler was wow. If you talk about a game when you wanted to create a wrestler, they had anything and everything in that game. Whether you can choose theme song. You could choose your finishing move, your move set, if he comes out with a manager or not, everything. Oh, you couldn't get me away from those games. There'll be times where it's like, okay, you got to go to school. Like, really? Oh, I wouldn't go to bed until like 2, 3 in
What's
the
that?
morning. I'd still be playing
What's
it.
that? I got to get
School.
this guy to have the title belt. I don't have time for school right now.
Did you know I'm in the road to WrestleMania? Like, I need to get that Intercontinental Championship belt. What do you, I, come on. Stone Cold's my next opponent. But yeah, that definitely had an impact on my life because when that game came out, being a wrestling fan, number one, and replaying the storylines within that game because you've seen the matchups. Next week on Raw, don't forget to watch Stone Cold versus The Rock or whatever. So you could get to replay those matches anyhow how you want. Um, Man, I can go on and on about those games. Those games are phenomenal. And everyone to this day, they would say that's probably their favorite wrestling game. Revenge, No Mercy.
Yeah, because
Better
you
than
got
the
so
2K
much
games,
choice. It's
right?
all about choice in the end, usually. I mean, the graphics are something, but when the game developers say we want you guys to have as much choice as possible, gamers really find that gratitude and that they'll give you all the respect for that.
Yeah, and that Aki engine, that Aki, that's the game developer company, Aki. They came up with a control scheme for those games in particular. What started it off was virtual pro wrestling,
Mm.
before the American games came out. Now, you want to play a wrestling game? Highly recommend. If you have a Nintendo 64 laying around, not even, because you could probably find this. Well, actually, I know for a fact you can because I have it on my Steam Deck, which I recommend. If you like to play emulators, get a Steam Deck. Highly recommended. You won't turn back. You'll look at your Switch and be like, I can play everything on the Steam Deck.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Um,
hearing. A lot of friends from work are telling me the same thing.
It's so good because I have all the wrestling games on my Steam Deck. Just the Nintendo 64 ones. I'm not talking about the PlayStation or Xbox or anything like that. I'm only strictly pertaining to the Nintendo 64 games because the controls, listen, I don't need to do 10 different things, pressing 10,000 different buttons. Give me the Steam Deck. I can make the controls however I want it, but it's just so fluid. The game just works. You don't have to worry about patches or download content. The game is there for you to play out of the box. And let me tell you, you want to have some fun, you want to have some good multiplayer, you don't have to be a wrestling fan. You get virtual pro wrestling, they have a UFC type of mode where you could just knock the person out. Like in UFC, where you see the guy, knocked out and he's not getting up to a 10 count or whatever, and he's just knocked out. There's a mode for that. There's a mode where you can have submission only. You can have those options as well in the Americanized versions of the game. But when it comes to virtual pro wrestling, they
Awesome.
just give you extra options that you can't find in No Mercy and Revenge, especially that UFC mode.
I mean,
It's
hopefully
phenomenal.
some people will hear this and actually discover that again. That would be really cool.
So speaking of which, glad that you brought that up. There actually is going to be a new wrestling game that's based off of Nintendo 64 versions of the wrestling games. I don't know the name of the company. I forgot the name, but that's going to be coming out this year. Graphically, it's going to be pretty much looking the same as the Nintendo 64, just
Kind of cool
up
though.
upgraded a little bit, yeah. But it's going to have the same play style. Ultra Pro Wrestling. Don't hold me
Okay.
to that, but I think that's the name of it. Look out for that. Highly recommend that. But yeah, that's a day one
Awesome.
game.
Yeah, wrestling is still big. I know there's kids that I teach that still watch it. And I know it's big on Netflix now. That's what it's showing. So
Yeah,
that's good. It is relevant still.
still
Um,
is crazy.
well, you had a two for one. I'm gonna have a one for two. And what
Okay.
that means is I'm gonna pick The Last of Us. Last of Us is storytelling gold. My brother played that game. That game, I couldn't even tell you that he was playing the game. I couldn't even believe it. I was watching a movie before my eyes. It was a survival game between two really, um, what am I trying to say? Really dynamic characters that you could easily relate to. You could relate to both of them. Oh my God. And it was terrifying. I remember feeling scared because it's a movie that you're in control of. And if you mess up, the movie ends badly. It was just a perfect mix of characters, writing, and fear. How they were
Yeah,
able to make you feel dread. That was
absolutely.
amazing. And the
Hmm.
ending was such a perfect open-ended ending. It's like, holy cow, this is what he did. Was it the right choice? Was it the wrong? What would you have done in his situation? So brilliant. And then the sequel came out. And then the sequel comes out and it says, well, what do we do with this now that it's done? Let's talk about the consequence. And in my opinion, from a writer's perspective, the sequel was just not as good as the first one. And I think they destroyed your experience. They
Yes.
destroyed your entire experience in the first one and made you
Yes.
feel guilty about it. They said, this is a great game. How could you not like this game? This is amazing storytelling. You killed Joel in the worst way and then wanted to make me like this piece of dirt character. Of course, I could relate to why she would do this, but
Right.
now you're making me play as her, and I don't like that. You're trying to make me feel like she's a likable character. So even all the way up into the end, that end fight, and then the mercy, and then just the sadness of it. And I think the problem with that is from again, as a storyteller myself, art doesn't always translate to fans enjoying it. We talked about people playing the game to escape. They're not looking to find art. This is art.
Right.
I want to see this person's message.
Right.
No offense, but no one cares about that
Right.
message. They want to
Right.
sit, shut their brain off, and have a real kick-ass time. And the story failed. So, Last of Us is one of the greatest games, I think,
Phenomenal.
ever, ever. And the
Yeah.
sequel, it looks beautiful. It sounds beautiful. The action is amazing. From a storytelling perspective, I don't know what I mean. I see you nod your head. I think it just fell flat.
I think they went with the shock value in part two, and it kind of felt like, well, we gotta like do something different in this game to catch people off guard. Oh, they definitely did that, but they went about it the wrong way. I kind of felt like Joel didn't need to die. And if he needed to, not in that kind of way, or they shouldn't have had, and I can't remember the girl. But anyway, it's been a minute since
I
I
think it
played
was
it, but
Abby. Abby is the one who
yes.
beat him up.
Yeah, like really, but you have to understand where the world is, and I think that's why they chose. I'm not going to go into, but I think I know. I think you know what I'm talking about here.
Yeah,
The
culturally,
reason,
culturally.
yes. I'm not going to get into that. I don't really like to talk about politics or anything like that, but I kind of feel like politics had a little bit something to do with it,
Yeah,
and I
I
kind of
think so
feel
too.
like part one I think was a lot better than part two. Graphically, part two aesthetically, I think they definitely updated it a lot. And then they
Amazing.
re-released part one. They updated part one, which looks phenomenal, but part two, it just fell flat. I enjoyed it, but I'm like, it's not the same without Joel. Joel was part of the story that I wanted to know more about, and I kind of felt like, had you waited till part three? It's
Exactly.
you know
You
part
have to remember when people are attached to this team, you just took away the biggest part of the team. And now you're left with Ellie, who still had
Ellie.
some growing up to do.
Yeah,
So
right,
yeah, she had that vengeance, but still you couldn't even find that grief to work through because you had to play as Abby.
right.
So what are you developers making us do? So yeah, I stand by that. Last of Us, amazing.
Yeah, and
Since-
it Isn't it crazy? Like you mentioned, so far the games that you had mentioned, well, some of them I don't even have on my list because it affect well so far, because there's so many games.
I know.
It's like it's
A
just like
lot.
books, right? I mean, it's crazy. There's so many options and so many genres, categories, you name it, it's out there. Sci-fi, horror, drama, everything. And a lot of these games, especially Last of Us, have all of that in one game. It's
Truth.
incredible.
Yes.
Incredible. But part two, I was just like, I really hope he says that part two was just it fell flat. I was really hoping he would say that
Oh
because,
yeah. It's
ooh,
and we're not the only ones. So
oh yeah, I heard that a lot of people felt the same way. It
yeah,
just,
come on.
mm-mm.
All right. What's the next? Now what? We're up to number six, I think. Well,
uh,
I think we're making our way.
six.
We're doing pretty
Yeah,
good.
yeah, getting
All right.
there.
What you got?
I'm gonna I'm gonna go with NHL 94.
Oh wow,
Um,
94. I don't remember that game.
for
Tell me
Sega
about it.
Genesis, for Sega
What? What?
Genesis.
Okay.
Um, I didn't have a Sega Genesis at the time, but my cousin did. So I'd go over to my cousin's house and I play NHL 94 with him all the time. And I play as the New York Rangers, but at the time they had like an older logo. It kind of looks similar, but you know, they just added the emblem a little bit. Sometimes a lot of teams they wind up over the years they wind up changing it, but 94 was a big year for hockey. That's when they won their Stanley Cup, New York Rangers. That was their second Stanley Cup. And Mark Messier, phenomenal job. You talk about a team that was not expected to win that Stanley Cup. They pulled it out. And that game I was just hooked on. That was, and I could be wrong here. I don't know 93 had any fights in it, but I'm pretty sure in 94, they had some hockey fights in it where you're just like bashing the guy and then you see him just like fall to the ground. The referee just goes, ah, and you just, you have to go to um, the sidelines, and you're in your little box penalty box. Um, and I think that game was just so much fun. That's another game that we had so many tournaments in, and then you can have a whole season. And the reason why I brought that up is because they re-released NHL 94 a few years ago. I had to buy it. Because I like a game that you don't have to press 10,000 buttons just to shoot the puck. Where's your A and B? You press one button to just, that's all you need. You don't need to go crazy. You don't have to think outside the box for a sports game. Like, it's ridiculous. But I rebought it because it kept the same controls. You could choose the updated controls. I'm like, no, give me those Sega Genesis controls all day long. And they added the new teams. They added that wasn't, in there, the Vegas Golden Knights, which is my other favorite hockey team. So it's New York Rangers and Golden Knights, two of my favorite teams. Um, so when you pit those teams against one another, you're talking about like, ooh, of course I have to go with my Rangers. I have to. Back, listen, that's my team. But I'm happy that Vegas Knights, they won the Stanley Cup. I'm happy that they won. I think it was like a few seasons ago. I'm pretty sure. It's hard to keep watch sports now, especially in this state, because well, we won't get into that. Um, but anyway, um, yeah, NHL 94. I would have so many tournaments in that. I play as Rangers all the time. I think it was ahead of its game when you can actually fight in it. You could just like throw haymakers and punches, and you're just duking it out. And then you would have like this little life bar that would come up, and you could just knock the crap out of each other. It's like rock'em sock'em. Game is great. I think it was ahead of its time, but I could be wrong. Maybe 93 introduced the fighting, but I think I'm gonna stand on top of the hill, and I think I'm gonna trust my instincts, and I believe that 94 I think started that off. I think that's why I liked it because they introduced that, and I think they just made it more realistic, even though the graphics were garbage. It's a hockey game, up and down. That's all you need. You know what your teams are when you have that blue or red circle under you. You know who you're playing as. P1 stands for player one. So it doesn't take a rocket science to figure that out. Um, but that game, That's one of my favorite sports teams. I'm not including wrestling because wrestling is sports entertainment. As my favorite sports game. So I'm gonna have to go with NHL '94. That game still holds up. I still love it. Still play it.
Well, Frank, since you brought up the fighting, the health bar, my next pick to emulate yours, I'm sure you've played Soul Calibur before. You ever play that
Yep.
game?
Yeah.
Well, if you love history and if you love fantasy, you mix the two together and you get Soul Calibur. And I know it started with Soul Edge and then, Soul Calibur, but Soul Calibur 2 made a believer out of me. Oh my God. Now, I had the GameCube at that time, so I had Link as the special character, and that was the best one. That was the
Yeah.
coolest character. All the things that Link could do, you can do in the fighting game.
You know who Xbox had as a special character?
Spawn, baby.
Spawn.
That was
Yeah.
badass. Spawn was really cool. The only thing that bothered me, I was like, come on, why they should have had him use his cape as a weapon, not an axe. I mean, he
Right.
uses his chains. So I said it's got to be Link.
Right.
So, but the thing that's so cool about that game is, as I said, it was so engrossing because it involved history, which I love. It involved fantasy, which I love. It was a perfect mix between the two, in my opinion. Awesome storytelling, and they basically emulated real life character uh, archetypes, I guess. And when I played that game, Soul Calibur 2 in particular, I loved Mitsurugi, right? Little did I know that there was a real life type of Mitsurugi guy, Miyamoto Musashi, I think his name is, one of the greatest sword fighters who ever lived.
Hmm.
One of those like legends, those guys that would challenge someone and he would defeat them somehow. The guy was almost undefeatable, and that's who Mitsurugi was created after. And then you have the Greeks, right? And then you have the French, and you have people from Africa and from Britain and from Japan and China. So it really was such an awesome portrayal of that time period with that fantasy element. So Soul Calibur for me was just a badass. And you know what? That also started the time when I started to not trust IGN. It started for me long before now. I know IGN is out of its mind now. Their
Yeah.
reviews are so stupid.
Yeah.
But when I was a kid, I remember they reviewed Soul Calibur 2 and they gave it an 8 when they were giving other games 9s and 10s that I thought deserved it. And I said, am I the crazy one? This game is so fun and addicting. And I thought, you know what? It's their opinion versus my opinion.
Right.
When I look back, I think to myself, I had so much fun with that game. It's not, it's great to hear what other critics have to say, but
Hmm.
it's really about your experience. I think that's what we're sort of talking about here. So,
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
well, I think we should take one more break.
Okay.
When we come back, I think we're going to be able to knock out our top 5 picks because I think these are awesome picks right now, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's like I said, there's games that I probably don't have on my list, you probably have on yours, and vice versa. And there's some games that we probably have on the same list, but there's so many to choose from. But I had to choose this list only because of the fact that of how much time I played
Invested.
these games.
Yeah, I
Oh
know.
my God, I invested
Well, we
so
have
much
one
time.
so far. We have one the first one. It's
True.
going to happen again. We had
Another
Metal
year,
Gear Solid. We might have another.
right?
All
Yeah,
right,
we still got
guys, don't
time.
go anywhere. What'd you say?
Still got time.
He's got it. We got time. I saved some of the best, so I'm sure you did too. All right, don't go anywhere, guys. We'll be right back. All right, guys, this is it. Our grand finale. We've reached the top five. So, Frank, do the honors, man. What's in your top five here?
All right, for number five, I'm gonna have to go with since you said Soul Calibur, I think that was your number six choice. I'm gonna have to go with Tekken. That's number five on mine. PlayStation, I think ever since that system came out, that's another game that I put a lot of time in. The very first Tekken game, I played as King. That's my go-to. That's my main. He'd always wear like, the blue shirt and tie, like he looked like a sailor. But fun fact is actually he's like a wrestler and he wears like that tiger mask on his head. Like it's just ridiculous. But wrestling is kind of ridiculous if you think about it too, because they wear like what, like short shorts and like, it's
Spandex
man
and muscle.
spandex.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. And they're over the top. This character was over the top, and I'm like, this guy's crazy. I was like, but I like it though. I like his move set. He did this thing where you pick him up, pick your opponent up, jump up, and like do a power bomb, or like he'd do like a DDT. He'd jump on the guy, roll, do a spin move, and go bam, and it smashes his opponent's face into like the concrete floor. I was like, this guy's awesome. I like wrestling. That's my guy, and that's why I had to put this on my list because I spent so much time playing that game. And, it's one of those games that I still go back to. I still, even the new Tekkens, I play as King, kind of like Mario Kart. I play as Yoshi to this day. It's one of those things where it's like if a game grabs you, it just has you. It just really just takes just takes your time and you're just playing and playing and playing. And like I said, you'll be looking at the clock and be like, oh, 10 minutes. Yeah, I could play for 10 minutes. No, those 10 minutes can easily turn into hours.
Well, yeah. I
It's
mean, well, you mentioned it's a game you go back to. My fifth pick is a game I have not been able to go back to. I could if I want to, but I thought they were going to bring it back. But this company has been underwater. This company is messing up. I'm talking about Knights of the Old Republic. And I played the crap out of those games. And the RPG element of that game floored me. And I liked Star Wars, okay? Now, this is when it was Lucas Arts, I believe. I learned so much from that game about Star Wars, not just about the weapons, but also the philosophies, the different factions. And again, it was a lot of choice, the things you can do, and the graphics don't hold up as well as I thought they would, but the story does, and the music does, and the feel like you're in Star Wars. And they had awesome villains, awesome heroes, awesome anti-heroes. So I had to have Kotor in that one. And I don't know.
that's a good one.
Yeah, it's a
That's a
blast.
good
And if
one.
anyone doesn't know what I'm talking about, first of all, come on. You got to look this up. And I don't know if it's on Game Pass on Xbox. If it is, do it. Please just do it and get back into Star Wars. Star Wars hasn't really been hitting the right way right now. And if you're starving for it, Knights of the Old Republic is gonna be that. So that was my five.
That that game is phenomenal. I remember playing that on the original Xbox when that game came out.
Yes, that's right. That's what I played it on.
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. I don't know where to start with that one, but that game was so much fun. And I'm just like, wow, an actual Star Wars game that I actually like. I mean, before it was like, of course, it was like older games on Super Nintendo and Genesis. I mean, those were fun, but I'm talking about this was ahead of its time. It's like you're talking about the RPG element where you can actually talk to other characters and then like it progresses the story depending on what you choose. That's how the
Mhm.
story progresses. And it's like, what? I could do whatever I want in this?
There you
Oh,
go.
well, okay, that's awesome. Yeah, that game, I definitely put some time into that game. I definitely did. That game graphically doesn't hold up, but it's still fun. But I did hear, I don't know if they're still going through with it, but I heard they're supposed to remaster it and it's supposed to be a sequel. But
As
I
long as
haven't
they
heard.
remaster it and they don't ruin it, I'm okay with it.
Right.
Just
They just need to,
remaster it and throw it at our face, and we're gonna play it. Just take the money, remaster the
right.
game, and let us spend it. Okay, let us spend the money.
They just
Let's
need the
change it in.
gameplay and as long as they keep the gameplay intact and upgrade the graphics
Just do that. Take the money.
and all these years they could add content. Maybe because a lot of times these games have content that they take out, kind of like movies and books. You want to change things around. Well, maybe my character might want to do this instead. Or maybe I want to have like it raining outside as opposed to it snowing. So they change different things, and I guarantee you, there's a lot of stuff on the cutting board floor that they didn't add, but they can now, and they can add probably like another like few hours to the current game. But I did hear that they're supposed to remaster it, and it's supposed to be a sequel.
We'll see.
You know, we'll see. That's one of those things where I try to stay in tune with a lot of things, and when I hear things, and then I'm like, okay, I think that's going to happen, but then there's other times where it's like that's not going to happen.
And it's
And
gonna
I'll,
take
and I'll,
so much time and so many resources. You have to think pragmatically sometimes over the
and you're
what they
gonna
can do.
right, and you're gonna laugh at me for saying this, but I'm gonna say it here. But Half-Life 3 is a thing. I'm just saying it is.
Oh, it's
Um,
coming?
that's what I've
Okay.
been hearing. I
Half-Life 1
this
and 2 are insane.
So from what I heard, the latest of it is that they have stuff in place and it's like pre-production, but they have an idea. And there's actually some video and as well as I think some artwork for like, new guns. And I have seen it online. And if I do find it, I will show you that. I'll send it to you. I just have to see if I can find it because a lot of times it might be one of those things where it's like, that's not supposed to get out into public. But
Well, that
we'll see
that
what happens.
what you're saying is almost it's close to my number 4. It's close, but I want to hear your pick. This is 4 we're on, right?
Uh,
Four.
3, 2. Yeah, this is number four.
All right.
Um, so number four, I'm gonna have to go with Grand Theft Auto 3.
That's a killer game, man. That's the one that started it all, right? I mean, 1 and 2 were big, but 3, that's legendary stuff right there.
My God, when that game came out on PlayStation 2, I had so many friends come over and they would be like, their parents would be calling my house, like looking for them, be like, what's going on? Like, and I'm like, oh, we're middle of a mission. We're doing. So, but that game, I'll tell you a little bit of a background story. I remember when that game came out, my dad was like, no, no. I'm like, but you could do so many things in it. You could steal cars and you can shoot and everything. He's like, no. So my dad's girlfriend at the time, now wife, they've been married for like over 20 years or something. But at the time, I'll never forget this. We're eating dinner at Olive Garden. Remember Olive Garden in Massapequa? I don't know if it's still there. But Toys R Us was right in the same shopping center. So on that particular day, it was launch day when that game came out. And I'm like itching. I'm like, man, how am I going to get this game? I want to get this game so bad. So I was like, I'm gonna bring it up. I'm gonna talk about it. So I wound up talking about it, and my mom now, I might as well, say it so this way. It's just easier to say it. I was like, Gloria, that's her name. I was like, Gloria, this is game. And my dad, his eyes was just like, don't you say it. Don't you say it because I ain't gonna get it. And she's like, I don't like those types of games, but you want to get that? Yeah, I'll get it. I was like, yeah, after we're done eating. So I was like, oh, snap. So we're done eating. And my dad's like, you know what? I know you're not going to start killing people and robbing people and stuff. You're a good kid. Yeah, fine, whatever. So I wound up getting it. Oh, you couldn't get me away from that PlayStation. Oh my God. Like I had so much time in that game and it's just another game you have time in, right? And back in the day with those memory cards, PlayStation 2 memory cards, you could see how many saves and all that kind of stuff that I had in that, and how many where I'm at and stuff, like what chapter I'm on, and all this mission and all that. So I'm like, oh man. Uh, but yeah, that game, and then the controversy, right, with that in society, of gun violence and kids, killing other kids and blah blah. And I was always, the type of person, the very first thing, it's like, so where are their parents? If you don't if your parent doesn't want you to play that game, guess what? Don't get it. Don't buy it.
And even
Right?
so, people again who don't play these games, they don't realize that I'm not playing Assassin's Creed and now I'm going to go try to kill the Knights Templar. There are kids who, of course, they could be easily swayed and all that. Like you said,
Yeah.
that's up to the family to sort of gauge, would this be right for my kid? But the gaming community is not so easily influenced to make us, we're not a bunch of psychopaths. There are
Right.
people who are a little crazy. They actually suffer from a condition where they think they can be Assassin's Creed and they can do parkour in the city and jump through that. So true,
Right.
but we're not going to go hijack a car and listen to some music on the radio going 100 miles an hour. So yes, that whole controversy with that game is totally unfounded. And look, the new one coming out, there's so many people ready to blow that game up. Can't wait to buy that game. Uh, and you can't imagine millions of people are all psychotic.
Right.
So, you know, speaking of psychotic, uh, my pick is a pick you might not think, but I bought the Xbox, and this was the first game I played on it. And do you remember Blood Rain?
Yes, the
Blood
vampire
Rain.
game.
Holy crap. You're a hot vampire in World War II that is killing Nazis who are a branch of the occult. I mean, that is just a recipe of awesomeness. And you're cutting them up, you're shooting them up, you're blowing them up, you're basically feasting upon them. You have a hit list. Um, that was such, I mean, again, I'm talking about history and fantasy and one thing. That
Right.
was like history and like horror, or I guess like history and gothic horror in the same game. And to me, I played that game, I think, 3 times in a row because it was so badass of all the things you could do. I think it had a little bit of the Matrix in there as the moves you can do and the slow motion. And
Yeah.
when you cut someone up, they're in pieces, and sometimes
And
if you
pieces just explodes and stuff.
explode everywhere, and if you kill the boss like that, it would be slow motion and shows their body flying to different parts. Blood Rain was the way to go for me, man. I still love that game.
Yeah, it's a classic. I think it's one of those things where it's like it's a cult classic, I want to say, because it's one of those types of games that yeah, there's people that know about it, but I don't think they ever played it. And when you play it, and then all of a sudden it's like you tell a friend, and that friend tells another friend. So it spreads around like wildfire. Grand Theft Auto, everyone knows what that is. But
Yeah,
there are games out that you just know personally when you played it, you know what a game. If you like a game, you like it. You know what I'm saying? Not everyone is gonna that it's not gonna be that cup of tea. But I love that kind of stuff. I love like the gory and all that kind of stuff and like the horror aspect and the vampires and monsters and all that kind of stuff, the Resident Evils and all that kind of stuff. I love horror. That's one of my favorite genres.
me too.
But yeah,
Yeah, I
that
love that.
game's phenomenal though. That was
It's
a
a
lot of
good
fun.
one. Yeah, a lot of people don't know what we're talking about. Look it up. Go on YouTube, look up some screenshots, look at some of the cinematics of it, and then you'll see, oh, this was awesome.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
We're up to three, man. It's getting better and better. What you got, Frank?
Um, so I have to throw this in. Tetris. I
Oh
have
my,
to. That
wow.
uh,
Old school.
Tetris. Um, I had my Game Boy taken away from me for months, because I'd spent so many hours on Tetris. That game is addicting, and I still play it. I just bought recently on Steam, um, I think it's called, don't hold me to this, but I think the full name is Tetris Evolution. But what happens is like, so every time you move a piece, there'll be a specific part of this of the song. So for instance, if you're hearing a drum beat in the back, right? And every time you spin around the piece, it'll go do 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 do. And if you move it over here, it'll be like do do. And it'll like depending on what piece that you're moving will correspond with the music. Um, and what's good about it is there's so many different modes. They added a lot more different like elements to it. So you could start off if you want to go fast from the jump, or you could just start from the very bottom and work your way up to get to like the level, the highest level, which I don't know what it is. If I'm not mistaken, on Game Boy, I think it was level 12.
Well,
And
how about that kid last year that actually got to the kill screen,
yeah,
played it
yeah,
all
it's
the way to the end? Yeah, that was a cool story.
listen, I'm happy that I beat the game one time. I only beat it one time on Game Boy. I can never do it again. And I listen, when it starts to go, I barely beat that game. And when I did, there was no time where I could take my phone and take a screenshot of it or anything like that back in the day. I kind of just was like, people were like, yeah, okay. I'm just happy my brother seen it. I showed my dad this, so no one could say anything. No one could take that away from me. I have proof. They seen it with their eyes. Good for me. I'm like, you see, I did it. It says congratulations, and then have like this little mini parade at the end, and it's like Russia. And they had the Russian music and stuff because that's where it came from. Uh, so, and I think it was by accident, if I'm not mistaken. I forgot the whole story of it. But yeah, the L-shaped piece, the square box, and it's crazy how that came about, and it still sells to this day. You talk about a game that still holds a test of time.
I know. Even my kids are playing it. I don't understand that. Whenever we have break and we have nothing else to do and we're about ready to go, some of them play Tetris. I don't know how this happens, but it's still relevant. It's just one
Still
of those
relevant.
things. Well, I
Yeah.
got something that's still relevant and it won't go away. It just won't leave. And that game is Witcher 3. Witcher 3 is one of
Yes.
the best games of all time, hands down,
Yep.
no question.
Yeah.
Witcher 3
Absolutely.
for me, I didn't even know the books existed. Okay, that's how naive I was, which I think many people were naive.
I was naive too. I had no idea either.
You had no idea. Yeah.
Right.
And then I'm playing it and I'm saying, wait, this is from book series? What is that? Then I come to find out Witcher, Witcher and then Witcher 2 and then Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. That game takes place after the books are finished. Not
Yeah.
crazy? So it's no,
Yeah.
you're basically playing the book that wasn't written yet. And it's up
Right.
to you. And you have these characters. They're represented beautifully. The people who created that game, because I did read all the books, and I
Hmm.
said, I feel like I'm reading the game right now. That's what I feel like. I feel like these characters are alive in my mind from the game in this book that I'm reading. That's how great the game was. Storytelling is phenomenal because it's not a rip of the book, it's a continuation. And these storytellers give you choice with characters who were already created, who had their adventure, who had their triumphs, and now you get to relive them the way you want. And if you think you made an error or a mistake and you want to try again or you want to have a different playthrough, the things that that game lets you do. Um, so as far as I'm concerned, Geralt, Geralt's my guy.
Yeah.
Great story, great action, great monsters. Witcher 3, that was my choice.
Yeah, I definitely agree on that one. That game, it's that's we talked about it before. So many games out there that I wish I could put. I'm like, you know what? That's definitely should be on everyone's list. If you haven't played Witcher 3, what the hell have you been doing? That
Oh,
game is phenomenal. Um, I'm still playing that game. I didn't finish that game. I'll be honest. There's always something to do in that game, and sometimes it's like a little overwhelming because you'll be doing one thing, another thing pops up, And it's like, okay, you go to do that, but by the time you get to that, there's 10 other things that's in its way. So it's like,
Exactly.
oh, okay, that's closer. So let me do that first. And then it's like, oh, wait a minute. Oh, I have to collect that item first before I could do the next mission anyway. So let me go do that. And you're backtracking. And when you backtrack, you're like, oh, this is awesome. I'm going to explore this. And then you don't even do any of the missions because you're just exploring the whole damn time.
Absolutely, man. It's a whole world. You have to really pace yourself. You have to be disciplined. I mean, well, the way you play these games is you play about, a week and a half, and then you stop and you go, all right, now I get it. Let me do a whole new playthrough. That's really how you play these games. So,
Absolutely.
all right, what are we
Absolutely.
up to? Are
Hands
we up
down.
to,
Number two,
holy cow, look at this. This is going to be good,
getting
man. What
there.
do you got?
Oh, I think this is going to be very good. And I think you would 100% agree.
Okay.
Uh, Skyrim.
Yeah, man. Skyrim is the way
Skyrim.
to go. I'm glad one of us said it.
Skyrim. And also, I'll preface this by saying that the your Finding Fantasy interview with Chris, episode
Yes.
2,
Yes.
everyone go out to see that because your discussion with him, top notch. Shout out to Chris
Thank you,
Schaefer,
man.
by the way.
Yes.
Yeah,
Schaefer,
absolutely.
thank you for that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mhm.
He, if I'm not mistaken, I'm sure by now he visited every park. He had to be
Almost.
throughout
He's
the United States.
48 states. The guy is a legend. He's a living
I,
legend.
you talk about like real life Skyrim. He lives it. He
He's seen
listens
it.
to
Yeah.
the soundtrack when he's exploring. That you can't get any better than that. That's
Love that soundtrack.
that soundtrack is amazing. You
It
can say,
is.
I'm not gonna do it. But anyway, I'll, I'll be making myself a fool if I try to do that. But I think everyone knows when you start up that game and you hear it and you see that symbol pop up, you already know that you're getting into something that you just have to get yourself ready because you talk about like you think that you're spending 10 minutes in a game. No, you can easily spend a whole day in that game and then go, oh wow, it's dark outside. I just
Oh,
started playing it like 9 in the morning.
that's just one more
Um,
mission. Just one more.
one more mission. That one more mission turns into like 10,000 other things.
Exactly.
Um,
Three more missions by accident.
but
Oh,
I don't know.
boy.
And the thing is, I don't know if I can explain anything better than how you guys discuss that game because that game is so relevant today. It's just they make it on everything. You could probably play it on your refrigerator. That game is everywhere.
Right?
You
Yep.
know,
It
it's
doesn't go away.
crazy. It
And this
doesn't go
came
away.
11/11/11. So this was
That's
2011, and we're right now, January 11th, 2025, filming this, at the time of this recording, and it's still relevant. I still play the music to relax or feel inspired. Uh,
yeah.
Crazy good game, bro.
And when that game came out, I was working at a law firm and I was just like, and I knew the game was coming out, but I have to work. I have to, you know what I mean? So it's like, so I show up to work and I'm like, I don't see anybody. Like, why am I the only one here? So I'm like looking around and I'm like, all right, whatever. And then all of a sudden, he's like, my boss comes over, and goes, "You here on Skyrim Day?" And I'm like, I could have took the day off. Oh, I so would have.
Skyrim,
And
baby.
yeah, that's what he called it, and I knew exactly what he was talking about because that game. If you don't know what Skyrim is, or if you never
Right.
heard of it,
Come on.
where have you been the past 14 years?
Where
Because
have you
if you never
been?
played Oblivion, oh my, Oblivion was phenomenal as well. But the reason why I like Skyrim more is because it had dragons in it. You can hunt dragons.
Yep.
You seen
It's
some of those mods? You can play as Macho Man Randy Savage, and he's like,
so many
"Ooh,
awesome
yeah,
mods. It could be a whole different game. But look at this.
play."
This was 2011. Bethesda hasn't even come close to coming up with a game that can compare with that. It's been their best since then. It's hard to compete with. I mean,
Yeah,
Fallout was really great too. Fallout 3, Fallout 4. But Skyrim that's the experience. And if you haven't experienced it, even if you don't like RPG games, just try it a little bit. Just see what it's all about. Yeah. I'm
yeah, that
totally
game's
with you on
addicting.
that.
It's addicting, that game. You can
It's
lose
super
yourself.
addicting. Well, pick number two. Kind of referenced this before. It's another fantasy game like Skyrim. It is Baldur's Gate 3. I've been playing Baldur's Gate 3 since Christmas, and it's been Christmas every day. Because Baldur's Gate 3, I do love Dungeons and Dragons. I was on a little podcast recently where my job was to talk about Dungeons and Dragons and why it's relevant, and why it's so great, and it's huge storied history. You're playing a Dungeons and Dragons game, and you make everything. They hardly limit you. Your imagination is like a sandbox right before your eyes,
Yeah,
and your choices matter so much that it could destroy the game. It could destroy the story, and you can feel like real heartache about some of these things, some of these choices. How many games make you feel like actually? My fiance and I were playing this a little while ago, and my character's relationship with another character, it's actually kind of brought her to tears. She couldn't believe it. It's done so perfectly well, but it's really up to you. It's your choice. And the more I play this game, the more I say to myself, how the heck did they pull this off? How did
right.
they write this? They had the lore already because Dungeons and Dragons lore is extensive, but how the hell did they program? How did they code all of these things? So, as far as storytelling and character development, the two major things you need in a good book, they nailed it. I could tell you that
Yeah.
right now. So, that's my second choice. We made it. Number one. What is one of our best games? What you got, Frank? I cannot wait to hear this.
I think, I don't know, maybe let's do this. I'm
Oh,
wearing the shirt.
Assassin's Creed?
Assassin's Creed. I'm gonna have to go with that. Also, I don't know if you could see on
Oh, I
there, I have
see it.
the
Oh my
symbol
gosh,
here.
look at that. It's the sim.
Uh, it's really bad. My addiction. I have the symbol.
Oh my gosh, it's everywhere,
Yeah.
dude.
It's bad. It's ridiculously bad, and I ha also have the ring as well.
Dang.
It's really bad.
You're a true
I
fan, diehard fan.
diehard fan because when the first one came out, I was like, I like it. Cool. All right. Desmond, you play as, Desmond, he's the one that kind of like started off. It's like uh so he goes to this amulet thing, and basically his ancestors, he has a part of his ancestors, I guess it's through his bloodline or whatever. But when the part two came out and you play as Enzo, I I like that character. I think Assassin's Creed 2 is my favorite one. So I'll put this in a list, in my opinion, my favorites anyway. Assassin's Creed 2, then it goes Black Flag, Valhalla, Origins, Odyssey. And then now I am playing Assassin's Creed Mirage. I have all the Assassin's Creeds, just like the
That
Grand
was in
Thefts
Egypt
and
Mirage,
your
I think, or was
the
that in
what?
Egypt Mirage? Egyptian, or was that something else?
No, so Egyptian is Origins, and
Origin
Mirage, yeah,
is
Mirage is like you're in Baghdad.
Baghdad. That's right. Oh yeah, you did say that. Okay,
Um,
yeah, Black Flag was
and
killer, awesome, fun too. Yeah, that was a blast.
I'm sure that you would agree to this, is that they take aspects from history, right? And
Yeah,
they implement them, and of course, a lot of the stuff they change, but
right.
they just take bits and pieces from what things happen, like historical events, right? And then they'll include them into these games. So, for instance, you'll be playing, let's say, Assassin's Creed Syndicate, where you're in England, right? And then all of a sudden you come across Ben Franklin like randomly, and he's outside with a kite with a key on it. And it's like, what is going on? Like, where the hell's so it's so cool how they'll have like real life characters. Well, I shouldn't say characters, I should say historical um people
Figures,
from
icon. Yeah.
figures, yes, icons. And you're just like, oh wow, they really did a lot with this. Uh it just grabs me. And again, it's one of those things where it's like we talked about Grand Theft Auto and you referenced Assassin's Creed. You know, I'm not going to go up to someone and slice their neck and then like hide their body in like a box. It's like you play these games to escape. And that's a perfect game, just like Skyrim, just like your Fallout, just like your Oblivion, just like a lot of these games that we play. And it doesn't necessarily have to be open world. I prefer open world because I kind of feel like you could do more and you're not confined in a box where you're like, oh, I can only go this way. Oh, I can only go that way. I can only do so many, small, minuscule things. But when the sky's the limit and you could do whatever you want, listen, Assassin's Creed, it's so much fun. Um, I can't wait for the new one, Shadows. But it's awesome. I spent a lot of time with Assassin's Creed. I was actually playing it before we started this podcast. I dabbled back into Mirage, trying to beat that one before the new one comes out. I if I had to guess with Assassin's Creed, I had to spend like a couple thousand hours easily combined with all Assassin's Creed franchise. And it's just one of those games that I have them on every platform, just like my Grand Theft Autos, just like my Skyrims. I had to buy them on every platform because that's how much of a good game it is. Your Witcher 3, every platform. It's, I mean, that's a game that you have to buy over and over again because that's how good of a game it is.
I have to ask you this: did you ever play Rogue?
Yes.
Assassin's Creed Rogue. I heard
Yep.
that was really
Have them
good
all.
too.
That
That
one
was,
is good. That one I forgot about that one. That one is really good. I did enjoy that one.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I
that one was
heard. I
good. That was
haven't played
actually
it. I will one day.
that was supposed to be download contents, but they wind up making it into its own game. That
Because
was never supposed to
it's
be
it's like Black Flag. It's
right.
similar. Yeah. Okay.
Similar, yeah.
All right. Well, Frank, thank you so much. You had some
Well,
awesome picks.
which your number one?
My number one. Okay.
Yeah,
This
that's what I
game,
want
yeah, this game series is what inspired me to be a writer. I'm serious. At a very young age, I said, I want to create these adventures now. Final Fantasy series.
Nice. Okay.
When I played Final Fantasy 2, which is really Final Fantasy 4, um, I that now you have to remember, guys, this is in the 80s, going into the 90s, where these games are all pixelated. The music was so soothing, so fantastical. The adventure was, I mean, you have to remember to have writing like that in a game that is 2D frame. It's turn-based, and to me, the stories are so beautifully woven. The lore is so thick, so beautiful. I have every single major song from each Final Fantasy game ever made. It's just gorgeous. And I love when Final Fantasy 6 came around, which in America was Final Fantasy 3, to think that the heroes would lose and have to recover and find a way to defeat this lunatic god. That's what Final Fantasy really does. It challenges you to overcome. And when you meet other characters that join your party, it is one of the most exciting moments in the entire game. You've just got a new character. What are they going to be like? What's going to happen to them? Do they have grudges with anyone? I know that Sephiroth is one of those characters that when you see him in the fire, standing there menacingly, and you find out his origin, that he was this like superior savior champion who fell from grace, like Lucifer, like Anakin Skywalker. So Final Fantasy covers it all. It has every single storytelling mechanic you could imagine. And I owe a lot to that series. I owe a lot to almost every Final Fantasy game. It inspired my imagination. It got my blood pumping for fantasy. So we were talking about this, Frank. The whole reason we wanted to do this podcast was to talk and celebrate video gaming and how it's had an impact on us. But think about pop culture. Where would we be in pop culture without the ability to play the stories of all these games from, the late 70s all the way to where we are now? Video gaming has been one of those massive, massive outlets. It's just like going to the movies. There are people who play in tournaments. There are people who are playing right now. There's hundreds of thousands of people playing Marvel Rivals, having a blast, right? There are people who have their careers on Twitch, on YouTube. Video gaming is a way of life, and we're all affected by it, even if we don't play it. Um, so, Frank, I want to tell you right now, this has been one of the best podcasts I've ever done. I had such a blast with you. Um, I hope we could do this again sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. And it's nice to catch up as well. So it's really cool because it's one of those things where I kind of feel like there's so many podcasts out there, and I know there's video game podcasts out there, but I kind of feel like they just review games that just came out and that's all they talk about, but they don't talk about like what impacted them in their lives as to why they chose that game or that genre or why they like video games. It's kind of one of those things where it's like IGN, you referenced that earlier. I feel like IGN, they're full of crap.
Yeah,
They,
they lost their way. I don't know what happened.
it, yeah, it's like if they don't like a game, they'll poo-poo it. They'll be like, "Oh, this game is horrible. We're going to give it a 6." And it's like, you're giving the game a 6? Did you ever play it? And they
Exactly.
say that they
How much
do.
did you play?
They give the game probably 10 minutes and they're like, well, we don't like that character, so it's a horrible game. Well, sometimes a character needs to develop in a game. You got to give it a little bit of time. If you spend 10 minutes on a game, you're not playing a game. You're just like playing a demo. And there are some demos, like I referenced Metal Gear Solid, that hook me like that. There are some demos out there that don't let you experience what you would experience in the full game. They give you a taste. And sometimes you need that taste in order for you. Are you going to buy that game? Or are you going to you know, you know what I'm saying? You got to get grabbed into a game for you to just get your time invested into it. I kind of feel like with IGN, they just review games because they just give a random number. They probably have a thing on the wall and they throw a dart at it. Whatever number it lands on, that's what they stick with. They don't actually play any of these games.
It's it,
Uh,
it's
you
it's
know,
possible, but Frank, I'll tell you this, since we only have 25 seconds left.
oh yeah, no problem.
I will say this. Um, get out there, get yourself a book to read, get inspired, and then get yourself a game to play with your loved ones, with your kids, with your mom, your dad, your friends. Get out there and play and have fun with your imagination a bit. Frank, I'll see you, man.
Absolutely.
Thanks for everything. Had a blast.
Got it.
All right.
Absolutely.
Until next time. Take
Bye.
it easy.
Two.